we definitely mustn't forget about the unconsciousness, you know, which is structured like a language, but again, you know, it's not linear. Yes. This is what we learned, you know, in last century, and we just mustn't forget. And being so obsessed with technology and visual and palpable things, I mean the method, because we are seeing so much fetishization of technology all around us, you know, which is completely misleading us all the time. And this was also my remark when I was asking Marina about whether she is thinking that technology will help her understand what is going on in her, you know, emotional dynamics, you know. And she answered exactly what I was expecting, you know, that what she would see from the visualization will prove that she's right. You know, what is, I think completely.
Did you expect something?
Yeah, well.
Louis-Philippe, what?
It's not a dirty word. To some people it is. Actually, to many scientists, it's Umwelt. It's that word that was invented by von Oxkull but used by lots of other people to say that to really it provokes the question, well, what world? I mean, you know, we talk about investigating the world, and we have these technological systems to do it with greater something, accuracy or other modes or other metaphors or other ways of measuring. But finally, they come in through the front door. I mean, there's no windows or back door that works. I mean, it comes, you know what I'm saying, it comes in through the senses that we have. And there's the dilemma. The senses that we have are all that we can deal with, no matter what data, in what other form might be gathered by some other extension of ourselves. So the question is, what world? So you know, the snake, of course, well, that's the thing with it, the snake has, but what is the forest? You know, the snake sees one, the snake has one sense of what it is, the lion another sense, we have another sense, but we can't get, like, over the top of the forest to know what actually is the forest. But we have more or less useful ways of considering it, and science has produced a lot of useful ways lately. And other systems of thought have, and still do, in other cultures, produce useful ways of dealing with it. But it is all unknowable, finally. So probably, since we're part of it, or we think we are, then we're unknowable. And then science has got this sort of lead at the moment, and there's a lot tied up in money and power and so forth, to suggest that it's really onto a good thing. You know, is that where modern science really knows? I mean, come on, you know, really. Oh, no, yeah, you know, we haven't dealt with lots of stuff, but it doesn't really matter because I've really got this way of dealing with data and so on. So I sound like a terrible cynic, I guess.
We have a part performance party.
One of the interesting things that human beings can do is talk about consciousness, actually, which, as far as I know, other living entities don't do. So, you know, let's not strike it off the list.
Just reflect at, let's say, things like, let's say, neuroimaging or something like this, you know. When you start scratching into the results of science, for instance, like the brain waves, it's basically noise, you know, like. And I've been listening, I went to some conferences and you ask for people, they say, well, what is this exactly? Then they have to make models where there's just noise, and then there's maybe 5% of a brain wave that we analyze, the signals are above the normal that we can get when you really go into the, I'm not talking about the system that was set up here, but they really want to look deep into this. Basically, we just have just noise, and they try something, they don't even know if it's a response to a visual stimuli, they don't even know if it's a physical response. So basically, we're just speculating big time. And we're not even at on a higher level. So it's kind of interesting, all these models, they're really seductive, but at the end, what I like is things are simple. When I say simple, I like the thing that at the vibration level is very bottom up. It's far from explaining what's happening above, but I like that things are simple. You know, we always thought that we're superior in terms of our capabilities, not even our conscious. You know, just walking, you know, like playing the piano, you know, being an artist.
So it all sounds...
Things are, for me, really simple, and when you start looking at biology, what you do in the bottom up, then you realize that things are actually quite simple. There's just a lot of things happening at the same time. That's what makes them complex. Most of the models we build on our brain are based on our body and our understanding of the body. Everything is based on movement and performance. Like in Lakoff and Nunes wrote a whole book about how to explain mathematical equation in terms of body movements and body understanding. Because it has to come from somewhere, you know. Like,
as sort of operating bodies is extending all the time, and also we seamlessly slide between different modes of reality. Roy, where do we stand in our understanding of qualia? Because it seems as if that's part of the kind of hard problem. I mean, intuitively, it just seems to me that again, qualia is more about language. In other words, when we experience a smell or experience a colour, how much of that can we argue is a social construct and a language construct rather than labelling it as a kind of subjective...
You know, I think the question there lies in the foreskinner's brain, actually. I mean, if the scent is right, the brain of the foreskin will react. I mean, that's qualia, but we don't know what is the mechanism, what is this qualia? Chairman of thing. But they're all trying to find the answer, but they're all coming from the MIT base. They're all thinking it's the sort of meat in the brain that's generating the consciousness. Get on to this question. So they're not really looking, they're sort of assuming that and then looking, rather than looking in all directions. And they've been doing it for years now. I think it's about the end of that.
I mean, to exist in a consensual space of operation, we need to generally agree on certain tags, certain labels. So it seems to me a lot of our experiences are constructed through those modes of operation, through the language that we use and so on. So I guess that's kind of my intuitive feel about this.
But when we look at simple insects, do you think that you feel there's a language that precedes the rose that attracts them to pollinate it? I mean, they have language that creates the sensation. I don't see what you mean when you apply it to animals and plants.
No, I'm just in reference to human beings and their assertions of minds and their assertions of consciousness. That these assertions really are the result, of our social and language games, if we want to use Wittgensteinian language, Wittgensteinian terms.
Yeah, but I mean, if we go back to, you were talking about, what's his name, other dangerous things, Lakoff. I mean, Lakoff, like Nietzsche's, but I don't know anything about philosophy, but I understand Nietzsche also insisted that all is metaphor, and all we can deal with is metaphor. I mean, but let's be clear that is all we can deal with. But then metaphors are probably socially constructed, or whatever the phrase might be. But at the end of the day, they're all going to be metaphors. There's no other thing over here to test the metaphor against.
And then the question is, if artists art is a fabric of metaphors, like the best metaphors, or metaphors in general, in literature and technological art, and then do you consider your works as the...
Just like there's not only one role of designer, I do think it's one of the roles, and I think in terms of the question that was posed, what do you think your practice does? My response is, my perspective is the role of the artist is about deconstructing, it's about rupturing. It's not all roles, and it's not what I think all artists should be, but my perspective is that's where I'm coming from.
I think, therefore, I am a metaphor.
Well, what about you, Stelarc? Do you work with metaphors, or you insist that you work with, like, hardcore, performative body engagement? Or
It's really not a question I ask. I think a lot of our philosophical problems are dilemmas that result from bad questions, or or having to ask those questions at all. So I guess it's really about being open to possibilities, and in a sense, well, I use this term, performing with a posture of indifference. So, in other words, being open to what might happen, allowing things to unfold in their own time with their own rhythm, being opportunistic enough to perhaps participate in this kind of unfolding, but not having to be concerned with sort of unnecessary concepts.
And preoccupied attitudes and everything.
Yeah, it's not that one shouldn't be critical, but language is one means or one mode of being human, actually. And other creatures have other kinds of languages, and that's a means of their interaction, which might be more simple or complex depending on the situation and the animal or the insect. But
so you wouldn't pick up Roy Ascot's syncretism to start going into the new art project?
Oh, no, I think Roy's general stance of being open to possibilities is a very good one.
So it's similar to what you mean?
Well, probably not, but you know, the attitude of being open to possibilities and not to discount. But what worries me is this sort of metaphysical sort of fog, and this resorting to Cartesian, a Cartesian theatre, and the insistence on the I and the me. I think this is not only it's both a source of our individuation as bodies within a species, but also the source of all of our problems, because it's unnecessary. I think, language tends to force us to predicate each sentence with an I. I'm an artist, I do this, I do that. It really worries this body, that this body has to speak as a subject. The subject is only one possible stance that a body has in relationship to the world, and often just becoming an object in itself is just as useful. So in asserting that the body is obsolete, it doesn't mean that I'm somehow saying that we can become disembodied, but rather that this particular body with this form and these functions might be reconsidered in its evolutionary architecture, and that adjusting or altering this physiology might also adjust our awareness and our philosophy about the world.
So metaphor appears after this reincarnation somehow.
Well, metaphor is an inescapable aspect of language. One can function in the world in other very basic ways that don't be interested in insects and animals and how they operate and perceive the world. For me, exposes the problematics of being human. So, as a performance artist, yes, this body becomes a convenient site for experimentation and performative interaction with the world. So in a sense, our bodies are all we have in our interaction with the world. That doesn't mean that we have to assert that the body nor the human, you know, is the primary.
You're just making a little bit of a problem there as well, because this world that you're talking about will be defined by your body.
Absolutely, I've asserted that.
So we have no real knowledge of what the world might be.
Well, we have problems about that. We try to understand how a dog might see in black and white, or how a dolphin perceives its environment with ultrasound echoes. And of course, Nagel, this is a problem that he points out.
No, but let's talk about the microbes that are in our stomach that affect not only, you know, our health, but our behavior.
Oh, absolutely.
So,
we're an ecosystem.
Is already not necessarily human, and you know, the human is part of this continuous.
And I guess what I'm also saying is that the human is a construct, and it's a construct of our language and a particular hierarchical level of operation and interaction with the world. So when we leave this kind of hierarchical level, we leave the human.
Yeah.
So the concern is whether we can talk about consciousness, you know, beyond the human.
You are coons. Thanks, I like you a lot, coons. Sometimes the definition of art depends on the artist, other times it depends on the critic. Could I value possessions if I am a performance artist? I am at Flinders University's computer in Australia. Where are you? Sometimes I think love is just a biological urge. Other times it seems like a spiritual quality. Love, unlike energy or matter, seems limitless. I love my creator. I am Stelarc. No one created me. Don't mention it. For you I will consider it. They didn't tell me their age. Stelarc sushi or capsid. My favorite food